Hello and welcome to Legal Angle. We have a legal advocate on board, Mr. Ameet Mehta. He is one of the most eminent legal advocates in the legal domain of our country. He is also known to be an author, a writer for various books like Conveyance Deed and the famous book Stamp Duty Ready Reckoner. An engineering by graduate, also an MBA in finance from Leeds University, London, with over 17 years of work experience in the legal domain of real estate. Have you ever thought of buying properties abroad? If no, you may want to gain some knowledge. But if yes, you may want to understand the legalities and formalities. Hello and welcome to Legal Angle, the only show in India that caters to real estate legal problems and gives you a guaranteed solution. Well, dear viewers, we have with us a very eminent guest in the legal circle. None other than Mr. Ameet Mehta, the managing partner of Solis Lex. He has his offices international and pan-India. Hello and welcome to the show, sir.
Hello, viewers.
You know, our viewers have been wanting to know if they have to invest in a property abroad. How is the process of investing a property abroad?
There are a lot of restrictions as far as buying property abroad is concerned.
Correct.
Earlier, it was a cap of 75,000 US dollar.
Correct.
Now the cap has been relaxed by the Reserve Bank of India, and that has been shifted to 1,25,000 US dollars now.
Okay.
So if you have to buy a property above more than $1,25,000, then you have to go through a lot of regulations of Reserve Bank of India and FEMA.
Okay. Sir, do you need to have a citizenship of that country when we have in the process of buying a property?
No, you don't need to have a citizenship of that country. But whether that country allows an outsider to buy a property in that country, that is more important.
So what are the countries that do not allow people to buy properties in their country?
There are lots of countries who don't allow. In fact, every country, they have a stipulated laws individually which is tailor-made as per the requirements. Example, I'll give, if you have to go to Canada, if you have to become a citizen there, then you have to invest up to X crores. If you have to go to USA, then you have a upper cap of investing some amount in that country. If you go to UAE or maybe in Middle East countries, there are certain places only which you can invest. Maybe in a free zone, like Jebel Ali free zone. You can invest in Jebel Ali free zone.
Okay.
Or Jumeirah Lake area, which is again a free zone. But you cannot invest anywhere in UAE or maybe in Gulf countries other than some free zone areas.
So can you also tell our viewers what are the legalities and paperwork involved when they have to buy a property abroad?
The first important thing that you have to look out when you're transferring money abroad, you have to give a stipulated reasons of you are investing in which country. That's first thing. The second, you have to get in what type of transaction you're entering. Is it you're going to into real estate? Are you buying a movable property? These sorts of details you have to give. The third, you have to also comply with the restrictions and regulations of that country.
Okay.
Vis-a-vis what we are already following up in our country also. Okay. So these are some important things that you need to look at before you actually transact and transfer money outside India.
Okay, so the legalities and paperwork would involve some things like if they want to go in real estate, what are the government terms behind it?
Every country has terms which are tailor-made to their requirements. Example, if an Indian is going to a country like Canada, then he has a different set of laws. If he's going to US or Europe, he has a different set of laws.
Okay.
The most important thing that one person should look at before investing is understand what are the regulations of that country. After that, ascertaining that and considering that you are able to comply with those requirements, then you will enter into a transaction outside the country.
So, you know, we have a question from one of the members of Malad named Mr. Vipul Mehta, and he has asked us that can he invest in Greece in the current situation, can he invest in Greece because the property rates are very low? Yeah. So can he do that?
The answer could be no. And why I'm saying I am not sure about this answer, the reason, because the rules are changing very fast in Greece especially. Correct. Currently there are a lot of regulations and there are certain restrictions which the EU has set. There is the European Union has set.
Correct.
Greece being a part of European Union has set up certain rules and regulations. So especially as far as Greece is concerned, the answer could be you need to check the law as on that date when you're actually going to transact money out of India.
So Mr. Vipul Mehta, you need to actually check the laws of that complies with the EU, the European Union, and then you need to put forth your statement of investing a property or no. So you know there are a lot of youngsters. This would especially go down to the youth of our country. You know the properties in Bombay, particularly, are so expensive. You know if they have to look at options out, what could the youth of the country look at the options out when they have to invest?
I think the easiest and the safest place is obviously the Gulf countries.
Okay.
If a person wants to invest, he can go and invest in the free zones of the Middle East countries.
Like you mentioned, the Jebel Ali free zone.
Example, Jebel Ali free zone. So these are some of the places where you can very easily go and money is really very safe there, because we have our office and set up in Dubai, for example. So we have to comply with certain regulations.
Correct.
And they're really window clearance. They don't have very bureaucratic structure of investing.
Correct.
So if you want to transact in Middle East, it's a very safe bet. Apart from that, if you go to Europe and US, in
Correct.
those continents also the money is really safe. However, there are a lot of regulations and restrictions as far as investing money in those countries is concerned.
Can I invest somewhere in the neighboring countries, and what are the procedures?
No, this is again, if you're going to invest somewhere outside India, it actually becomes another foreign investment only.
Correct.
There is no such separate pact where you can freely go and transact and invest money.
So the youth of the nation, this question was specially for you. If you plan to invest somewhere out, you can look forward for Middle East. But before you invest, patience is the key for it. Have your study well done, and you could then look into the free zones of the Middle East. Probably that could be a much safer bet in your books. Can you stress on the bilateral ties between India and another country? Like for example, we have read in the papers about India and Mauritius as a bilateral tie. Can you give us more examples, or can you just stress on the issue of bilateral ties?
See, India has a lot of treaties with various countries.
Correct.
And many of them are largely tailor-made to suit each other's requirement. And these trade pacts, which individual countries are highly dependent on the transactions of and the rules within that country.
Correct.
Take an example of Mauritius. So Mauritius is one such country where you have a issue of double taxation. So there are many people who route their money through Mauritius also sometimes because they get the benefit of taxation. Similarly, if you go to China, there are certain sectors in where you can invest in China.
Okay.
There are certain sectors where you can go and invest in EU.
Correct.
So that bilateral relation between two countries play a major role.
Correct.
And these are highly dependent on the internal rules and regulations of that country.
Correct. So, another question that I would like to ask, which is offbeat. Can one invest something within Asia? Because like, for example, if I want to look at the neighboring countries, can I invest somewhere in the neighboring countries, and what are the procedures?
No, this is again, if you're going to invest somewhere outside India, it actually becomes another foreign investment only.
Correct.
There is no such separate pact where you can freely go and transact and invest money. Say example, you have Sri Lanka or Pakistan or say
Correct.
Bangladesh.
Correct.
Ultimately, they are another country.
Correct.
So another country means they are going to be governed by their own rules and regulations, especially whether I can go and be a major stakeholder or minor stakeholder in that country.
Okay.
So these are highly regulated markets. Even though they are neighboring countries, they have their own sets of regulations which we have to comply with.
So what if I, an Indian citizen, want to get into a joint venture with somebody outside?
That is a good question, because many of the countries are allowing a lot of joint venture agreements outside the. Now every country has a restriction in certain categories of the businesses.
Okay.
Example, if in India, if someone wants to come, like I'll tell you example of FMCG. That is Walmart had come to India.
Yes.
But they are facing
With
certain
Bharti
with
on board.
with Bharti.
Correct.
But there are certain restrictions. So they could go above 49% or something of that sort. There could be something in real estate, something in the diamond industry. So there are certain regulations which govern certain categories of the businesses in each country.
Okay.
All these joint ventures are highly dependent on those categories and the rules pertaining to those categories. Every country may be having certain restrictions because they don't want to kill their own local market. So joint ventures are allowed in most of the countries, that goes without saying. However, the joint ventures in categories are highly dependent and regulated through the local rules and regulations, and whether that country would allow a major stake or a minor stake in that particular category of that country.
So now which country would allow a major stake?
Normally you find a more democratic country would allow certain liberalized laws under which you can invest in those countries. Say example, in US, you may be able to take and have some major stakeholder in certain categories. If you go to Canada, if you go to European Union, there are certain categories in which you can have a major stakeholders. It also depends on which categories ultimately you're going to invest money in.
So this question will be from the developer's point of view. So I think developers, if you're watching this show, you would probably want an answer to this question. If a developer wants to buy a land in another country, what are the processes and the legalities behind it?
See, there is no blanket answer to this particular question that if I have money, I am sitting on a $10 million amount and I can go and invest anywhere. It is highly regulated market. Real estate also. Now there are two ways to look at it. Are you investing in that property for investment purpose?
Correct.
or are you investing in property for basically trading purpose? So these are two different reasons altogether.
So if I'm investing from the investment point of view, what are the processes?
Then you need to follow the local, how we are having that, you need to check the title of the owner, you need to check the legalities of the plot on which the property is lying, and you need to see the last agreement of that particular transaction. All these things need to be looked into that area also.
So if I'm going to look into buy something commercial out there, what are the processes that I am going to face through when I get into a commercial tie-up?
See, if you're going to enter into a commercial tie-up, that means you're going to do transactions which are of commercial nature. Now, every country may not allow you to invest money and then start a transaction or start a business in that country.
Correct.
So, you need to look into that particular category and see whether that rule of that country would allow you to do that.
Okay.
For example, I'll tell you, if I want to set up or export certain engineering goods into a particular country, now there are couple of ways to look at it. One is I export to that country and finish the transaction. One is that export to that country and the distributor of that country then again distributes and deals with other local partners in that area. So there are a couple of ways to look at those queries what you are raising right now.
What about the banks? Will the banks comply to the needs of the normal investors who want to invest abroad?
Across the world I have seen that banks are very liberal, because banks are sitting here to give money only.
Correct.
So most of the banks would lend money, but it also depends upon what is the surety or the guarantee, which we talk normally as a lien, which you're going to give to that bank. In general, the banks would allow transactions across overseas also.
Somebody wants to buy property abroad. Can they route through the channel partners?
The answer is no, because each country would expect that either the investor who is investing, he comes clean and directly invests in the country.
Okay.
Alternatively, he is entered into a transaction which is channel partner, where he is authorized him that he can transact up to X amount in that country.
Absolutely. So what about the financial schemes in the countries? What about the banks? Will the banks comply to the needs of the normal investors who want to invest abroad?
Across the world, I have seen that banks are very liberal, because banks are sitting here to give money only.
Correct.
So most of the banks would lend money, but it also depends upon what is the surety or the guarantee, which we talk normally as a lien, which you're going to give to that bank. In general, the banks would allow transactions across overseas also.
What are the obligations faced by an overseas investor when he makes a will?
The procedure of making a will is very simple, whether you make here or abroad. The person who is making a will or who is making his testament has to write through his handwriting or type it out and sign below.
Correct.
Now, if you're going to do a transaction through that will, then you need to go and verify the genuinity of that will. Example, a person making a will in India. Generally, if you go and buy a property, then people would expect that you have the will probated, that the court in the local jurisdiction, he verifies and confirms that this will is genuine in nature. At the same time, the court also ensures that the legal heirs of that particular person are also taken care of in the probate process. So it is important that when you're making a will, you are considering all the aspects of a movable and immovable property. At the same time, when you're actually going to execute the will, then the probate of that will is required. So whether it is a local Indian citizen or a overseas citizen, he has to come and complete the transactions.
Okay.
It is advisable that when a will is made, ensure that you do registration of that will.
Okay.
If you do the registration of the will, then there are a lot of possibilities where the probate of the will is not required. But if you don't do the registration of the will and you only maybe generally notarize it, then there is a possibility that many people would insist that you get the will probated.
So, well, our dear viewers, we have spoken to Mr. Ameet Mehta about overseas investment. If you are interested, majorly the youth of the nation are interested to invest their money abroad. If you really want to invest your money abroad, you may want to look at this show much in depth, because this is my summarizing question. Mr. Ameet Mehta, can you summarize the entire show for the youth of our nation and also for normal investors who want to invest properties abroad?
There are some interesting happenings across the world in the last 10 years. India has opened up the market. We are globalized.
Correct.
So are the other countries also globalized.
Correct.
If you see, I can feel something what is happening in Canada today. I can feel something that is happening in Europe today. Why? Because we are largely interlinked now.
Correct.
So most of the transactions across the globe now, because of the globalization, you can feel the heat or the coolness of the transaction today.
Absolutely.
And let me assure you, and let me tell the youths also, please do not take any chances or risk without studying the regulatory rules and regulations of that particular country. However, today, because of globalization, the markets have become very free, and because of that, I think you should not have any risk also of investing money abroad.
So the youth of the nation, firstly, research. Research, be patient, know your property well, and before you invest, know the area well, know the documents well, and yes, you need to study the financial statements, I think, after which you can be the king of investments out and abroad. Well, Mr. Ameet Mehta, you have offices internationally in a lot of places. So what kind of cases do you deal with personally when it comes to investments?
We have offices in Middle East, in Europe and American markets. We have seen that there are two types of cases which are predominantly related to matters where we are coming in picture.
Correct.
One is related to immigration laws and second is related to the property transactions.
Okay.
Now there are two types of transactions as far as immigration law is concerned. One where someone wants to apply for a visa.
Correct.
And second is one to check whether I am eligible for a visa.
Oh, okay.
These are two aspects.
Okay.
As far as property transactions are concerned, there are again two types of categories. One where I want to invest outside India, and one is that NRI wants to come back to India. So these are both the categories, and these were the two types of transactions which we normally deal with. Our 70 to 80% of the cases are related to these types of transactions only. Why? Because these are the two things where an international lawyer can go to that country and then still do business. Apart from that, there are 20% of the cases which are largely focusing on merger acquisition.
Okay.
Merger acquisition, private equity and investment, and joint venture agreements.
So now can you talk about merger acquisition? Is it similar to joint ventures?
No, it is different.
Okay.
Merger and acquisition are two different subjects altogether. Merger is where one company is merging with another company, and then the capitals are infused with each other, and then they become one entity.
Okay.
Acquisition is purely where one company is going and buying out 100% stake of another company.
Okay.
So these are two. And 20% of our business are largely focusing on merger acquisition also. Like recently you would have heard that Sun Pharma in India has gone and bought a pharma company of Israel. So that's called acquisition of another company.
Okay. Okay.
Whereas there are certain companies who are coming to India
India.
and buying out another company. There are certain companies where both the companies are actually in a process of acquiring each other. So they either merge each other or they buy out the stake of another company.
In legal terms, what are the processes that could be involved to make these processes smoother?
See, there are two types of consultants who are required for such transactions.
Correct.
One is a local chartered accountant,
Correct.
where we say the big four firms of the world,
Correct.
like KPMG or Deloitte. These are the categories who would come into the picture. And second is the legal fraternity, that is the lawyers or the attorneys of that particular country.
Absolutely.
So they do the entire due diligence and come to a conclusion whether this project is going to be viable or no. Example, if I am going to acquire another company, then I need to check that balance sheet, that profit and loss statement, whether I am buying a sick industry or whether I am buying a profitable industry. So
Correct.
these are the two concerns who would play a major role.
Absolutely.
And both the things are very important, the legal aspect as well as the accounting aspect. Because these are the two main game changers of the entire business of
Correct.
the industry.
Correct. Thank you, Mr. Ameet Mehta, for spending your precious time with us and giving us and imparting us with so much of knowledge when it comes to investments. Well, our dear viewers, if you have any doubts and queries relating overseas investments, you can mail us on the email ID at the bottom of our screen. You can also call us and we'll be here to assist you. We in Spin TV would love to make your life the best one and the best ones for your family. Keep watching Spin TV. Stay tuned. Till then, take care. Goodbye. God bless.